Morning, Tartary, Australia. Well, what a long sojourn Campbell and I've had. It's been a couple of weeks since we've been on air doing a podcast. So, hey, buddy, how you going?
I'm good. I'm good. A little bit under the weather, but I'm getting good. I'm getting better. Got a little
Yeah.
bit of a croaky voice.
Look, I think everyone is going through some massive stuff on that level. Like we mustn't underestimate the energy around us these days. Like we don't really have a narrative for it or sort of a container, but man, like there's lots of shit going on in relation to frequency and changes, and that affects us pretty severely,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah, that's the thing about, rest. I think we're not sort of taking that into account that it's the energy that's changing and fluctuating.
Yeah.
It's tiring us out, but we don't, sort of see that in a physical sense. So that's what I've been doing. I think since I got back, I've slept probably 5 days out of seven. It's been,
Yeah.
so I've just been sleeping and sleeping. It's bizarre.
It is an interesting one. Like those few hours that I get sort of in the midnight hours where everything is still and quiet and cool is sort of when I feel like I'm being revived. But during the day at the moment, it's very hot where I am. And like we've had a big year and everyone's had such a massive year. And like that's just in the doing side of things, not actually like even the mental deprogramming side of things is chewing along in the background constantly 24/7, always like expanding and changing your neuroplasticity. Like all of that takes energy that we're not
Mm.
accounting for.
Yeah, yeah. And the fact that we don't know what's coming, everything's up in the air, right? Nothing sort of,
Exactly.
there's no routine or anything like that left, which it means everyone's in a space they're not used to being in, which is
Exactly.
uncomfortable. So yeah, man, it's like the quadruple, quintuplet whammy.
It's a tricky one. Like, and so Campbell and I have just been to Rockhampton, and Campbell came and spent a couple of days with me here at the farm. And, like we had to acknowledge that in the last sort of 24 months, there's been like a huge shakeup of the human race. And what it's done here in Australia, it's just like scattered everyone like ants, like scattered everyone across the whole realm, really, because, everyone's sort of trying to figure out where they want to be in this time and account for not knowing what's coming and what would be best for their energy, and everyone's sort of like leaning towards wanting to be on the land and in nature, and that's like a really big move. Lots of people having to leave their homes and their state and move their families and all their stuff to do. It's like there's a lot going on. And I think really I feel like 2023 we're going to see a lot of people settling finally after 2 years, and like that energetic of being grounded coming in. And as a result, there should be, I feel, like a big shift to thriving in within our community again, where we've got
Mm.
our grounded energy, and we've placed ourselves and we can start to like simplify again.
Yes. Yeah, well, I mean, that's all we need, really, isn't it? We got all sort of sidetracked. All we need is, food, shelter, good water, good people, all that kind of stuff, and that's really it. All the other
Well, I
stuff
mean,
sort of I
all those things you can't really buy, you have to
well,
like, you have to
exactly.
manifest, create, bring it together,
Mm,
learn a lot,
yeah.
make all that happening. So I think as people have started to go through that journey, I feel 23 is going to be good. I feel like it's going to be a good year
Mm.
for us little, I don't even know what we call each other, for the sake of a better word, us little light beings roaming around the realm, trying to like do the right thing and be of service and look after ourselves.
At the same time, yeah. Well, I think everyone's, sort of finally got onto it in the last 6 months, at least a lot more people that, we don't know what's happening, so we've got to manifest it ourselves, right?
Yeah,
Stop, sort of thinking, oh, what are they doing? What if, and
yeah,
turn it to where am I going? What do I need to do? Who do I need to
yeah,
become?
yeah, for
Then
sure.
that'll be 2023, man. That'll be when all the good stuff happens.
Well, look, Campbell, we have had a big year, and we've ended the year with a trip to Rockhampton. And this event came about because I did a talk at Norfolk Island, and there was these rockin' chicks in the audience. And man, they were so excited. And to their credit, they were the sort of leaders in the Rockhampton Yeppoon area that really like stood up for their sovereignty and really got the community aware of what was going on. And then they sort of saw me talk and they were like, awesome, this is a whole like next level of information and
I went next level, man.
next level. And
Level.
yeah, they invited us to come up to Rockhampton. So call out to the ladies. You are amazing. And thank you so much for accommodating us and looking after us. It was really rad. And we had a great show and filled like this great pub place in Rockhampton. And Campbell and I had a great opportunity to explore an amazing Tartarian township. Holy shit, man.
Yeah, it was cool, wasn't it? Really good buildings.
Amazing.
Interesting stories. So yeah, we'll definitely get into that as well. And yeah, we pretty much got treated like rock stars. I mean, gosh, we got treated so well. So big thank you to everyone up there, especially the Three Stooges.
Yes.
Girls.
And I have to say, like, it's been really interesting when we do these sorts of events. Like, we're called to go to different places and we get to actually be in spaces. And I had really never had the opportunity to explore sort of like North Queensland in relation to our work and actually seeing like how extensive this Tartarian architecture has like that it's just basically it feels like every township that we know as a town here in Australia is there because of the architecture of the past civilization.
Yeah. And we've kind of been touching on that and saying, you know, it looks like that. Obviously, we haven't been to every town, but yeah, when you get way up north in the Queensland coast to, you know, a town of 70,000, you know, you don't expect to see these big oversized buildings that are the same as what we find in Brisbane, you know, Melbourne, Sydney, and all built at the same time, right, in the 1880s. So it's all the way up the coast. And interesting, you know, mountains, right? Mountain ranges with things that look like pyramids and ancient giant trees, shall we say.
Yeah, so I mean, like the mountains were just fantastic. Like going through the Glasshouse Mountains, going through Sunshine Coast and up to Rockhampton. It's just like you really do feel from our lens that you're going through an ancient forest landscape, like gigantic tree stumps, gigantic mountains that look like fallen trees, and shitloads of pyramids everywhere. You know, we always talk of Gympie with pyramids, but there are so many up that trip, so many. Amazing stuff. So everywhere, pyramids and ancient forests, yeah,
we might have to do some work on that. Bernie's been looking into work where they're tracing the lines off the pyramids, the angles, and extrapolating them, and they're hitting other sites. So it's a good way to see if they're an actual pyramid. You can just do it on Google Earth, right? And if it starts hitting stuff, well, there's something there. So yeah, but it really did look like an ancient forest because there's no mountain range as such. It's just this flat landscape with these big trees or pyramids that just pop out of it randomly. So it's very interesting. I think a lot was going on in the centre of Australia.
So yeah, I mean, Rockhampton Canberra was like an awesome trip, and we'll definitely do a deep dive on that location and leading up to the trip because it's just so worth showing everyone the beauty of the structures up there and how similar they reflect the ones in the city and all those things. So Rockhampton.
Yes. And of course, we'll be in Brisbane in February.
Yes,
which is only, you know, 6 or 7 weeks away again.
So that tour is called Tartaria and Beyond. Tartaria and Beyond. And of course it's with our beloved soul sister JCK, and we're really excited to launch the live tour across Australia next year. We love being up on stage. We love the combination of our three energetics, and we're really looking forward to inviting as sellout audiences to these events. Sort of, we're looking at the 400, 500 number of audience members. So we're really excited to be bringing everyone together for basically a massive celebration of all of our frequencies bands coming together in the one place with such, you know, deprogrammed minds and values. Like, it really is an extraordinary event.
And I think there's going to be lots of that kind of stuff going on next year. So we'll be one of the first. So you can jump in and grab a ticket if you're in the region.
Yeah.
We'll have to get that set up. I don't think it's on the website yet, but we
No, not yet. Yeah. So yeah, Campbell. So apart from Rockhampton, obviously we've had a lot of crazy new discussions with where our theories are taking us. So I reckon we should like
yes.
leading on to Christmas, I think we should potentially have a bit of an overview chat of where we're at with our ideas, and then lead that to the following podcast coming up. What do you reckon?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
So, I mean, the beginnings obviously Tartaria and the buildings, which opened our minds to well, to what is this place, right? What could civilizations be? I think it was the big one is, we all sort of think of another civilization, what would it be like? And we basically just superimpose our civilization
yeah,
somewhere else, right? Change
yeah.
the clothes a bit, change the accent
Hmm.
or something. But now we've thought of things like, civilizations of the air, all this civilizations based on frequency, all these different things, based on art and grandeur. So it's been a very interesting and brain expanding track, and it's only
Definitely.
been, I mean, I think we're hitting maybe a year and a half since we started.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. And look, a couple of podcasts ago, we started to really, well, we went through like looking at what is the sun and what's the sun's role in all of this. And then we started to look at, asking the question, well, what is sleep and what are dreams and why don't we ever talk about such things? And, is it even natural to us? And I think one of the questions I want to ask Jason when we speak to him next is from a historical evidence, like, do we have evidence that sleep was something that happened before this reset? Do we have evidence of dreams?
Mm.
Are they recounted and witnessed? Is it part of the culture before our last experience? So I think with the Tartarian stuff, like it's led us into the most amazing new questions. And it was about a week ago, Campbell mentioned something to me just off the cuff. You talked about dark elves, and I was like, dark elves, what is this dark elf concept? And of course, our notion of elves and these sort of mythical beasts sort of live in our cultural fantasy realm, video game realm, movie realm, and of course leading us to the beautiful concept of fucking Christmas. And what are elves on the shelves? So I'm like, I want to actually look into elves, man. Like, what is this elf thing? And so we went on a really fun deep dive with one of our friends, Cassie, last week, and it was fun, right? We had the sun beating on our backs, like flies up our nose. We're all like cowered over my laptop, trying to like going on this like rabbit hole, and it was so enlightening. Oh my god! So
Mm.
let's do it. Let's introduce the summary of where we're at now and start to discuss elves and
Elves
dwarfs.
and dwarfs, yes. Well, I mean, this is the big question, right? Is if we used to be this, or there used to be this great civilization, then what happened, right? Who took it down? Who are these controllers? And of course, there's all these different mythologies. But I've been looking into the if I can speak, the Norse mythology, and the Tree of Yggdrasil and the Dark Elves. And yeah, we just had this idea because when I was watching Tolkien the first time, that's really what got me was the size of the elves, because I got
Yeah,
programmed that they're just little,
yeah,
Santa's little helpers and like the little ones that help the shoemaker and all this kind of stuff, and with their little stockings on. But when you start looking into the actual, legends and things, they're not. They're tall, at least as tall as us. And yeah, they got all these interesting powers, and so yeah, we find that what we've been taught about elves is nothing. It's not true at all. It's not based on anything. In fact, it's a whitewash. They've tried to change our perception of what an elf is. So
yeah.
we went down that rabbit hole. We thought, why would they do that?
Yeah. I mean, like basically, we're always interested in the question, for better or worse, is who are they? Who are the they? Who is the they behind the simulation, the they behind the agenda, the they behind this like hijacking? Who are the they? You know, it's just like it's one of those questions I just endlessly chew on. I can't help myself. I want to know. So
Mm,
so when we started to look at elves, which led us strangely to dwarfs, and we'll feel that in a minute, we realized that previous mythology and amazing to actually like look into a place where normally we just would dismiss it instantly. You wouldn't even think about it. Would you even think to start talking about dwarfs? Like we have no cultural reference from them apart from Lord of the Rings and Snow White. And yet when we started digging into the Nordic mythologies, into the Icelandic mythology, into like the European mythologies, wow, did elves and dwarves come up like fundament to the point where they were being discussed as humans walking and equal walking amongst us as equals, basically. Like
mm,
the stuff I was reading last night, they were literally integrated into our culture. And then we're thinking, wow, like this elf concept, were they the civilization that actually built these beautiful I mean, when we look at like how elves are represented through fantasy films,
mm,
always behind them is Tartaria.
mm.
Always their buildings, their structures, their palaces, their kingdoms look
Yeah.
exactly like the old realm that we study.
Yep.
Is that a coincidence?
Mm. And they're tall and white, and all the stories we get of people who brought technology were these tall white people. So yeah, and that they definitely seem to be there. And we get, all these, channeling and people seeing, angels or whatever. They all look like the description of tall elves, white
Yeah.
elves, good elves, whatever you want to call them. Um, but there's also, we probably all heard that there's dark elves as well. And that's kind of what got us the most. We thought, oh, the Dark Elves, because they show us the Dark Elves, in movies like Dark City, the white faced people, that are the dark men, all that kind of stuff. They're all like the Dark Elves. But
Mm.
what are Dark Elves?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how fascinating. So as we looked at what are dark elves and started to look at the history on dark elves, a few things are noted. One is there's a distinction between the light elves and the dark elves. They live in different realms, like they have a different title, different realms, different location. The white elves seem to be through history akin to nature and nature spirits and beauty and enhancement and healing, but supreme magicians. So don't forget that, supreme magicians. The dark elves, strangely enough, ended up morphing into, when we looked at the word dark elf through history, it ends up being synonymous, the same as the word dwarf. And most of the history looking at dark elves basically dismissed the dark elves as a modern phenomenon and said actually the original use of the word, the original intention, and the original stories make those dark elves dwarfs.
Mm,
And those dwarfs, here's some characteristics. They're supreme magicians. They're supreme miners and supreme alchemists. They're responsible for making the magical tools of the gods, aka Thor's hammer and
mm,
the golden lasso and the rings.
yeah.
And they're amazing alchemists. So they work with metals. They live in kingdoms under the ground. This is interesting. But when they see the sun, they turn to stone. Hello, vampires. Hello, trolls.
Yeah.
Hello, all of these images of titans and beasts and beings become rock on our realm. And
Mm,
I'm very interested to look at how this is even possible, how you can take an organic matter and when it interacts with sunlight, it can actually turn to stone, which means the sun is a really big question mark in all of this. Like, what is the sun and why is it so significant and so powerful that we've got all these legends of these dark energies turning to stone when they're exposed to it?
mm.
And the other thing, just before we sort of drop the summary, is that the dwarfs are tall. They have white alabaster skin. They have bigger than usual blue eyes. They have long white hair and long white beards, and they're strong and they're muscular. And these dwarfs are actually like akin to what we would know elves to be.
Exactly. Yeah. No short, stumpy references at all. It's the same thing. Is that they did with the elves is they just shrunk them, right, and made them these cute little things that you don't need to worry about, right? Just the fairy tales, right? It's just a
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, they did all that. And the other thing that we found out that they were very good at was making beer, right? Mead and different
Mead.
concoctions and what do we call them? Potions and things like this, which is because to tie it back as well, turning to stone with the
Yeah.
sun means that if our theory is correct and there used to be no night, then they wouldn't be able to come up at all. Okay,
Exactly.
so they would need to make nighttime. And that would also, you would think, if they were in their realm, well, why would they get caught by the stone, right? They'd know not by the sun and turn to stone, they'd know not to do
Exactly.
that. But if they're coming up and they're not used to the sun coming, then yeah, it kind of makes sense. So it's getting all
Exactly.
very, very, esoteric and fairy tale, but this is where we get led when we go down these rabbit holes. So
I
yeah.
mean, Campbell, like when we did the talk at Rockhampton, we were looking at the sculptures, the beautiful sculptures around the realm, and we were looking at this thing called Medusa technology. But imagine if these beautiful sculptures were just elves that have come up to the surface and got
Mm,
caught by the sun.
mm,
Like it's quite an interesting link. And on the topic of mead, because of course the second thing that made us really stand up and take note of this pathway was because Cam and I've been looking at what are dreams, what is sleep, like how evidence is that in our actual reality? Is it just a false time space loop? Is it something to do with our hijacking? And of course, when we started to look at mead, the what mead does through history is it actually has the power to put you to sleep. That's where we get the stories of Rip Van Winkle or Sleeping Beauty, that these characters end up falling into a very long
Wilson.
slumber of
Yeah.
many, many years. And it's always connected with dwarfs. And in that slumber, this is what dwarfs are famous for throughout history. They actually will, in that slumber, when you're asleep, they have the ability to enter your being, enter your energetic open your chakras, I guess, and enter into your consciousness and control your dreams. And the idea of nightmares actually came from dwarfs, that they would sit. This is how they described it. It would feel like a presence was sitting, I guess, that pack of paralysis, and they would enter your dream space and they would
Yeah,
control your
just broke up
consciousness,
there.
alter your dreams, give you nightmares. Very
So,
much like the BFG, like big.
oh, there you are. You just broke up before you said
Oh,
that
sorry.
sitting
What
on
did
your
I get to?
chest when you were saying they sit on your chest.
Ah,
Sort of. So, yes.
they sit on your chest, which would be very akin to sleep paralysis, that panic of sleep paralysis. There's a pressure on your chest, and then they have the ability to enter your energetic field and control your dreams or manipulate your dreams. And this is where we get the original idea of nightmares came from the dwarfs
Mm,
and how they have the ability to affect us at nighttime and control us during the day through the impact that they can have at nighttime, very much like Dark City. And
yes.
so this is so interesting, Campbell, that we were asking these questions. And so we've arrived at dwarfs.
Mm,
And so, like, could it mean, like, I'm just going to put it out there. I mean, what we're proposing here potentially is that dwarfs are the they behind this black magic or this simulation or this hijacking. And we uncovered that there's a perpetual war that goes on between the dark dwarfs and the light elves, which could actually attest to the collapse of the what caused the collapse of the Tartarian culture if they were in fact elves, white elves.
mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, it's very interesting info because we've also been talking about, like I said, what are dreams and what happens? Are some other people controlling? We've literally brought this up. Are people controlling us in our dreams? They're either
Yeah.
wiping them or they're programming us, and that's sort of skewing what we're doing during the waking hours. And of course, did they bring in the moon at nighttime? So it all kind of is starting to link in.
Yeah.
And then yeah, this beer thing, there's so many stories with people, getting drunk or we know, right? You drink beer and you fall asleep.
Yeah.
It's
Beer's
still
very much
doing
like
that.
mead.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And the spirits and everything. So um yeah, that they basically give us meat, fall asleep, then they sit on our chest and program us. that's what, the old stories say. So,
And like when we look at the idea of the gods, like Thor and Odin and the gods, like when as we trace this through the mythology, historically, those gods are elves.
yeah.
Those gods look like, act like, and actually are referred to in the older stories as elves. And
Mm.
interestingly, I found this line that I'll just read to you last night. It said, there does not seem to have been any clear-cut distinction between humans and gods, aka elves and gods. Then elves were presumably thought of as being human-like and existing in opposition to the giants. This is what it says on this article. They exist in opposition to the giants.
Wow.
So that is interesting to me. And then last night there's a movie I was watching called Troll, and it's just come
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
Yeah.
I've seen half of it. Yeah,
No, I've seen half of it. I got bored, but I
yeah,
saw
me
half of it. Yeah.
too.
But like the troll notion is that they literally were the mountains. They
Yeah.
literally were the mountains. They roamed free and part of human culture, like we would say that giants definitely did. And they could just like lie down and look exactly like a mountain. And
Yeah.
and they are stone. They were literally stone.
Makes that quote by Jesus a bit different, doesn't it? Say,
Yes.
move mountain, and it moves. It's just
Yeah.
the troll. He gets up and walks away.
So, all right. So we've got this. All right. So we've got this concept that there is potentially two supreme magicians, like magical
Yeah.
species, that are actually bound and holding this realm as it is. That the hijacking has come at the hands of the dwarfs underground, and they do have extraordinary kingdoms underground, or I should say, not underground, but under our realm. Like when we say underground, we think of this globe model, but actually it could just be under our realm. Their realm is under our realm. And then we've got these light elves that they both look very human, like akin to how we know gods, akin to all that extraordinary beauty and culture. And Tartaria really, really goes hand in hand with how light elves are described to us, aesthetically beautiful creators, aesthetically creators, supreme architects, supreme nature, akin to nature and the beauty of nature and animals. Like this whole notion that we've sort of been exploring at Tartaria links really profoundly with the idea of light elves. So imagine if the war that's been going on is between these two groups, and we are like the creators in the middle. Like, so we've got like the Pleiades and the cosmic cultures, all those beings that are here channeling to come and apparently benefit us or save us or help us, look like white elves. And then we've got this like dark underground reptilian. We don't even know if the reptilian draconian element is just not another guise for a black dwarf, right?
Yeah, or some
We don't
kind of
know.
troll or something. We just don't know what the deal is with that. But it does look like the dwarfs, the ones in control, right? And of course, even in like the Thor movies or all the tales of Thor, we've got what's his name? Enki. Enki is like a dwarf, what we would call it, used to call it dark elf. He's like a dwarf, and Enki, and how they put him up there to say, look, we made it to the royal families, haha, we're in there. And
are you referring to Loki?
Oh, Loki, that's what I meant. Loki, not Enki. Probably Enki anyway, right?
Yeah, well, Enki and Enlil, like exactly, because they've just been elves.
Thor and Loki, yeah, probably, yeah. And also El's Elohim, El, God.
Exactly. And actually, when you look at the meaning of the word elf, that if you go through all the different like original intention for those words all the way through different cultures, they are akin to human-like names. Like that's actually one really powerful observation. Like they're integrated into names of beings. Like whereas the black elves, the dwarves, are not. They don't have the same connotation with the use of their words. So that's interesting as well. Like there's a lot of evidence to show us that elves elves and humans were akin to knowing of each other and sharing a realm together, and that potentially the Tartarian culture and the human culture were a human slash elf culture, and there was also dwarfs slash giants or trolls and vampires potentially, and then the two have been essentially at war, to the point where the magic has been so supreme from the dwarf end that we got reset and our memories wiped, and have no concept of this true history, no concept of the kin that benefits us or the kin that manipulates us. And Campbell, like, when we talk about dwarves, I mean, what a whitewashing. It's nowhere in our culture. We've got no reference point to it. It appears nothing. It's nowhere. It's nothing. It's nothing. But even the only place I ever saw it was Lord of the Rings. And in the new series that's come out on Rings of Power, like the dwarfs and the elves have an extremely connected relationship. And they are like enemies and foes and friends all at once. Like, you can see the relationship being represented there as complicated, and a push between dark and light and takeovers and hijackings and friendship. And so it's like, it's really interesting.
Yeah. It's interesting, like that's what we're going through at the moment, right? Is, you know, the elves, the light elves, are these nature spirits, right? They're like of the land, shall we say, the earth, and the dwarves are the mechanics, right? The things, they're the people who build stuff and machines and all this kind of stuff, right? The machine,
yes,
right? So they represent the system, right? The machine, and the light elves represent, you know, getting back to nature. Because, you know, this is one thing that I've always wondered about with Tartaria is, you know, humans tend to do better in nature, right? We just do. Like we don't do that well when we live in cities. So what are all these cities for? That's why we don't think they were for living. But yeah, so we've got that connection as well. Is, you know, the way that the world's going. Yeah, one's definitely dark, dwarf traits, and one's light elf traits.
And Campbell, like we've got to I can remember how this all started was we were actually talking about Atlantis, and we were looking, that's right, we were looking at Atlantis and thinking to ourselves, hang on a minute, like Atlantis is represented to us as this like godly, advanced, like divine culture. All the new age workers and the light workers, they all hold Atlantis very highly. It's very revered as a civilization, and it's returning and its culture. But what do we hear often that the hijack has occurred from beings of the sea, that could potentially Atlantis be also part of this hijacking. The survivors of Atlantis, like they came from the sea to the land, and like were they somehow connected with the elves and not the good ones? I mean, it's possible, Campbell, that Atlantis is not what we have been taught it is.
Again, and if that was the controllers, that's what they'd do, right? They'd switch it to make us think that was the good, you know, the good people. But we all know that you know, Atlantis destroyed itself again with technology.
Yeah, technology.
Right?
Yes.
With technology. And yeah, there's all these stories of the Confederation of the Sea People who came,
that's right,
from nowhere, and obviously, you know, we could tie them to the Phoenicians and things like that.
yeah,
but they basically came in and just started wiping all these civilizations out, like
absolutely.
literally. And this was, as far as we can tell, the Atlanteans. They just came in and took over. And I mean, Atlantis
Violent.
is an interesting word, isn't it? You know, at land. Is that
yes.
when they came up to the land?
And they were so violent, like the takeover, the genocide was so violent and so heartless. Like it doesn't seem to be akin to how we see Atlantis, or it's represented to us. But yeah, Ramtha used to say that the Elatians worshipped the god of the mind, the gods of the intellect, of science, and they have reincarnated as the Silicon Valley type people, the Bill Gates type people, and they were like, they did create a weapon that pierced the stratosphere and brought the rains down and broke the biosphere, and then the Lemurians were represented as the earth, nature. They worship the unknown god. So if we were to look at that from a concept of dwarfs to elves, and one other thing interesting from the Ramtha teachings is he saw the Atlanteans as shorter, redder people. Like they weren't, you know, these beautiful, tall, white beings that we have been told they were, more akin to what we would see as like underground mining type, like that reptilian physique, that sort of but I mean, it's interesting to like flip everything that we've been taught, even in the new age community. I mean, obviously we do a lot of that, but like Atlantis hasn't really ever been looked at as negatively geared. So could they be actually a part of the hijacking culture, which we could maybe say are dwarfs?
Yeah. I mean, we'll go down that sort of rabbit hole a bit, but that's what it looks like. And like I say, the stuff they were doing is the same stuff that we hear about when they first got to the Americas and all these places where they just ran around just, massacring people, right?
Yeah.
And the same stuff they're still doing today. This is what this Sea Confederation was doing. And now we, of course, maritime law, all this kind of stuff, law of the sea, water. So yeah, that's another big thing. So obviously we've made some big connections, and we're gonna have to expand on some of them. But yeah, we sort of tend to throw these things out, and a week later there's all this stuff hits us, all this information, like
Yeah.
most of the time sort of proving it's right, giving us a bit more info to go down. So it's a very interesting little path we're on.
I mean, like, I don't think within the Tartarian community or consciousness, like, I mean, gosh, the word Tartarian just feels so limited now when we discuss these sort of things, right? Yeah, it feels a bit, but like in our communities, like people are not like talking about dwarves and elves, and for us to say potentially offer the premise that they are dwarfs, the benefactor are the elves, and this whole simulation is held up by magic. And we haven't really understood that, and haven't understood our connection to those two cultures, and those two cultures have literally been eradicated from our history books. We look at Tartaria being eradicated, but like literally the elf dwarf cultures have been eradicated from our history books. They've been chucked very lightly into our fantasy novels, but to the point of eradication that most people in their whole lifetime would never seriously comprehend any brain power towards dwarfs, and imagine if they were the ones behind all of this. Holy fuck.
Well, that's what they do, right? I mean, our main reference is Snow White, right? These cute, stupid sort of little dudes who are completely harmless. But of course they gave Snow White a drink, right? A potion, and she fell asleep in a coffin, right? A glass coffin, because this is how they've hidden it so well, is they've split it up, right? Because now we can extrapolate that vampires are dwarves. They're tall, they're white, and they can't be out in the sunlight, which is the same as what we know about dwarves now. Snow White was a tall white. Sorry, I was just saying about the vampires.
Yeah.
It's a good way to hide the dwarves, right? Let's call them vampires, definitely. But they can't 100%. Be out in the light of day. They're tall and they're white. We have all these things. So what we think is a vampire is actually a dwarf, and what we think is a dwarf is just made up, right? It doesn't exist. It's got nothing.
And of course, like, let's bring it back to Christmas time. So we look at Santa now. Obviously, if you do even 1 second of research on the history of Christmas, all you're going to find is demonic references that the elves, and all the way through history, actually, and I can tell you this from my research in the last couple of days, I'm just got this article up, all the way through history, when they use the word elf, they are talking about demons. They are talking about negative spirits, and like gross ones, like scary, like Grampus. So like, we did an episode on it last Christmas. We looked at Grampus and the demons, but basically, in summary, Santa has always been seen as Saint Nicholas, and the opposite side of him, his brother, is Grampus. And Grampus, basically, alongside Santa Claus, goes and delivers a judgment on children, and if they're good or they're bad. If they're bad, they get kidnapped by Grampus and basically abused and eaten, basically, and which is very akin to what we see these dark magicians still doing with the human race. And like, when you look at the elves, like, so if we look at Santa as being represented, just another acronym for Satan, but the elves essentially could literally be a cute, dumb version of the dark elf army, like the dark elf army, the dark dwarfs. And the story really is looking at Santa Claus and this army of elves that are completely telepathically linked, immortal, and can't come out of the North Pole, and we could say can't come up from the underground potentially. Like you don't see them, they're literally at the North Pole 24/7. Is Santa just a representative for a general, a leader in this scary storyline that we've all like integrated? So, I mean, Campbell, we're talking about Santa and Krampus and, the elves being represented quite demonically. And then, interestingly, and this is weird. This is a weird side note. Like the elf on the fucking shelf, man. Like that is a side note because like when I was Googling, I wanted to see if we had any real videos of elves, like if anyone had actually captured some elves. And it was dominated by these
elf on the shelf that move around.
Videos of people claiming that their elves have moved.
Yeah.
And, yeah, because the whole story with the elves and shelves, you can't touch them because then that destroys the magic. So like they have to be moved by themselves. So the parents have to do it when the kids are sleeping, blah, blah, blah. But it's dominated by, they're fake or real or whatever, but it's dominated with these elves like moving around at night. Like, and I'm thinking, okay, yes, look, this is just a stupid toy. People have torn them apart, but I don't know, like there is a case to be made of the magic and the elves and the shelves, and every single household having it suddenly got an elf on the shelf and they're all like moving around at nighttime. Like at nighttime, the dreaming space, when just a thing.
Yeah, just a story, right? They move at nighttime, not during the day. And they're sitting up there watching everyone. Bloody watchers.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, I guess like this tangent we've gone on has been fascinating because it's led us through a whole conversation also we've just had with Jason from Archaics, and like amazing to like link it into the idea that this realm has been split into 3 parts, and like the hell realm, the black dwarf realm, the dwarf realm, the kingdoms of that energetic, the Middle Earth, us here, hello, here we are, and then the heavens above us, the gods, blah blah blah, and that something has basically severed those 3 layers or those 3 realms. Jason would say that was the day the sky collapsed and brought the stratosphere, the what does he call it, the cloud cover, the vapor cover down onto the lands. And then after that, this like intermixing between elves and dwarfs and mythical creatures and beasts and gods and humans sort of came to an abrupt end.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then from that abrupt end, as we start to repair and regenerate, there's a hybridization that goes on that actually generates sort of like, I guess, us today.
Seems like it. I mean, it's like when we see that picture of all the Tolkien.
Can you hear me? Oh, yeah.
Oh, can you hear me? Yeah. And it shows, the dwarves and the elves and all these different creatures. It's like that's what we had, but we've all interbred, right? So now we're pretty much all the same. But yeah, like it looks like there was big people, little people in between, but over time we've all sort of interbred, and now we're much similar to than we used to be. And this is the genetic modification we hear about all the time. It's in the Bible, it's in everywhere. The Nephilim, the fallen angels breeding with man and creating giants. I mean, that's just another word for creating something different, maybe, right? All these different whatever races, people, sizes. We're a mixed bag now, that's for sure.
So, and potentially that was never the case because everyone just freely intermingled in their own race, realm, culture. And when the sort of like, I mean, I'm going to say the word quarantine, but like when the split happened between those layers or those realms, there seemed to have been a need to interact in the Middle Earth in this realm via genetic interbreeding, because our bodies were able to deal with the sun And once again, that sort of like the collapse of the vapor cover and the connection with the sun and the connection with turning things to stone and the connection with the darkness and the underrealm and the heavens and us, like it's all very intermixed there. And they're such good questions for everyone to like chew on, you know, like
Right.
definitely this there was a massive shift basically
Yeah.
when the sky fell. And it just, you should put up that cartoon of Henny Penny the chicken when it's
Yes.
running
Yeah.
around going, the sky is falling on
It's
my head.
falling.
Do you remember that story?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Chicken Little, the sky's falling. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And this is, they tell us everything comes
Chicken
from
licken,
above, right?
Chicken Little.
Chicken Little. They say everything comes from above, and that's where all the problems are, and that's where we need to put all the money and everything. But as always, it's just a flip. Everything's coming from below. That's where all the money's going. That's where all their stuff's going. It's not going into space. And so that just, it looks very much like they're in cahoots, right? That the elites of this world are in cahoots with another realm that are from
Yep.
underground and know a lot more about this place than we do. And that's the deception, right?
Underground.
They've just flipped everything, literally.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like we were looking at space being in the ocean, but we should also look at like the heavens being underground and the culture we're dealing with, the aliens being underground. Like that civilization, the concept of kingdoms literally being under our feet, whole expansive, extraordinary cultural realms under our feet that we haven't had any access to or any focus on at all. Like it's been deleted from our concept. Like, hello, when they sold us the space model, the round earth model, under our feet is liquid fucking lava. It's like burning, you can't even do it. Like it's like this solid mass, and at the center is this liquid of lava.
Just liquid lava. Yeah, and now we found out it's actually all like prime water, pretty much, down there in caves, right, and caverns that we're not allowed to know about.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we should probably do a really good deep dive on Australia's underground, what we know from our Indigenous storyline, what we know from our cave structures, just really pull it out. Like have we got any evidence through our small history in Australia, and probably drawing on the longer history of our Indigenous, of there being underground civilizations here in Australia.
Yep.
Like
definitely right. And also we're going to do more deep dives on the elves and the dwarves and what's going on, who are these people, and because the fingerprints, when we sort of started to look at it, fingerprints are everywhere. Like literally every question we ask, we're like, oh my god, that topic's really sort of just come out and given us all this information. So we're going to definitely dive down on are the dark elves dwarves, and who are the good elves, and all this kind of stuff. What the bloody hell's going on?
Yeah, I mean, because even if they're just one of many of the mythologies, as in, the trolls and the goblins and all the other energies, the leprechauns that go around that fit of the underrealms, the realm under us, like there does seem to be a strong historical timeline that puts elves and dwarfs and humans into literally it feels like dwarfs were the underground, humans were the middle earth, and elves were above in the heavens. And somewhere in that falls this Tartarian consciousness, and that of all the beasts and all the beings of all the realms, those are the three that seem to be dominant in what we've looked at so far as history goes. And of course, if we were standing in India today or standing in China today, we'd have probably other names for it, but I would be interested to see how dwarfs and elves are represented here by our Indigenous Australians. I would like to see evidence of those words coming through, and what names and stories we have, particularly here in Australia, and even looking at like other realms like China and Europe and the Americas. Like, if we were to look at their mythology, would we see represented what does appear to be elves and dwarfs dominantly? Like, are they the dominant subcategories? I guess what I'm asking. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we know that all they need to do is
And
just
woo!
change the
We've just taken
description.
Tartaria into the Lord of the Rings realm. So
All
we should
right.
probably, yep.
Yes, let's start it up. So yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. Hope you like that one. A bit of a wrap up today. We're gonna keep going down this path. So lots coming up. Then of course, it's gonna be Christmas, and
Yeah.
then it's gonna be February, and we're gonna be in Brisbane. So we're hoping to get a few weeks off as well, where we can sit down and do nothing, which would be nice.
Oh, the dream, the dream.
The dream of time.
So everyone, look, have a wonderful week. I hope you're enjoying our divergence into the Lord of the Realms realm here in Tartaria, Australia. We really are taking it very seriously. We think that it's going to give way to some amazing new questions along the path, and of course, that's what we're all interested in. Is actually the quest. So, like, I hope you enjoyed that little summarization. And have an amazing week, guys. And we'll see you next week on Tartaria, Australia. And remember to subscribe, because you know what? We fucking never say this. Subscribe
Subscribe
to our channels and yeah,
like,
especially my
comment.
YouTube. Fuck, it's like it's my YouTube is sat at like 5,000-6,000 people for like 18 months.
I know,
It's crazy.
Come and support Kelly.
But yeah, and also buy yourself a Christmas t-shirt.
Yes.
Buy yourself a Christmas t-shirt.
Yes.
It really helps
us. Indeed, and you'll find our website and everything else down there. So go check it all out.
All right, everyone. We love you. We love you. We love you. Have the best week ever.
And we'll talk to you next week. Stay awesome. Bye for now.
Have the best week ever. We'll talk to you next week. Bye, guys.
Bye.